Good morning, everyone. Happy Father's Day. Happy Heavenly Father's Day. I love how we say that with Divine Mother. Happy Divine Mother's Day and Happy Heavenly Father's Day. So it's just part of our practice with that is taking the highest perspective of fatherhood or motherhood that each of us within us has. These masculine and feminine qualities, and bringing them into balance in the journey of yoga is learning how to live in alignment with that. So the Heavenly Father, it said, Master said that Jesus taught us a lot about that. I mean, he taught about the loving Father, right? Heavenly Father. This was his message. And when Yogananda came, his message was Divine Mother. To say, and then how do these two go together? Because he also said Heavenly Father. And ultimately, Heavenly Father is wisdom, discrimination, knowing how to follow the rule or the law, and having the power to do that, which takes great power to follow, in yoga teaching, the yamas and niyamas, the principles of right living. And then Divine Mother is this, in the reading today, the affirmation of peace of mind. It's one of my favorites where Swami talks about this weightless waterfall. So soothing, so cooling, so reassuring. And the beautiful lullaby that Sai Ganesh sang. It takes such a state of relaxation, and that's what I felt in that song. Right, it's this beautiful message of relax, dear one. Right? So Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, I've got you. You're good. And as I've been reflecting on the reading of Peace of Mind in the eternal now, and it's said in spiritual teaching that God is in the now. Right? Also omnipresent, and there really is no past or future. But this idea, there's one of our yoga posture affirmations that Swami wrote, as I rise above all thought of past and future into the eternal now. And it's this guide, this invitation to stay right here, right in this moment. And that's where we find God. And in the reading today, talking about, and this is the affirmation part, peace of mind comes from prayer and meditation, not from money in the bank. Other ways of saying it, not from perfect health, not from everything being worked out. It's not the message of the culture, right, at all. So navigating that, finding a way, and I was reminded to live in a state of peace of mind. And in reflecting on this, I was thinking of something I've heard many times that Swamiji said about himself, which is he never let anything disturb his inner peace. And Asha's talked a lot about in observing him and being with him, it's not that he didn't experience life. It's not that he didn't experience the pain of betrayal or other difficulties, certainly his physical health, extraordinary journey of his physical health. And I brought it, I'm realizing I didn't bring it out, and that's okay because I can summarize it. But one of my favorite writings about Swamiji comes from the book As We've Known Him. And it's a collection of people talking about their experience of Swami Kriyananda. And one of them is called The Questionnaire. And Sherry, his dentist, went with him to go see a specialist. He needed some specialized work. And she said, we need to fill out a medical questionnaire. Okay, right? And those who've read it and know, so it asks questions, do you have, and I won't do it in the right order here because I don't have it in front of me, arthritis, yes, diabetes, yes, have you had surgery, yes, I've had heart surgery, and prosthetics, yes, 2 hip replacements, and on it went, right? Just an unbelievable list of what have you encountered physically. And then the last question, how would you rate your overall health, right? Excellent, Swamiji said. And, because he lived in this higher reality of himself, of who we are. So he taught us that all the time, and I just love it when I hold on to that, right? So how do we do it? And I've been thinking about one of the things I've noticed whenever I give a talk or a Sunday service, all different things will come into mind, right? And I have I feel like between myself and God, all the talks that never happen, right? Oh, that would be a good thing to say. Yeah, who knows? Like, and usually all of them, they just seem to be for my own relationship with God and an understanding. Some come out, right? But different stories, different things. And I kept having these memories, childhood memories, some of them very silly, and I think, what does that have to do with the topic? Today, when Sai Ganesh was singing, it's so interesting how it can come together, right? So what I saw was how my relationship with God as a child was very innocent, very full of faith, I feel very fortunate that I wasn't raised in a religion, but my neighbor was. And she brought me to church one day. And the minute I heard about God, and I happened to know I was 4, I was like, yes, I was confident. I just knew it. Like, of course there's God who loves everybody. And I just knew it. And I lived in that confidence for a very long time. So later, as an adult, different experience. And so these phases, right? So these stories that would come back to me, what stood out in them was the way in which I experienced God's presence unexpectedly. And somehow I knew it, right? Like I would know it was this experience, but I would sense something else greater. So a relationship with animals, always very dear to me. And I actually had a very challenging upbringing, right? Just, wow, a really challenging one. And part of that was I was left on my own a lot, which there was a grace in that, right? There was a grace in that. So from a very young age, I was very independent and self-sufficient and exploring. I was always exploring. Anyway, miraculously in my life, a horse came into my life, which if you knew my life, that's the most one of the most surprising events. How did I get a horse? So anyway, I did have one. And the image that kept coming back to me was I was riding with a friend. And we went to A&W, if anyone knows that place. I don't know if they exist anymore, right? And we went and got an ice cream cone. And I was standing there, and I went to take a lick, and it was gone. My ice cream was gone, right? And I was about 10. Right? I was like, it's gone, right? And we're looking, it's gone. Do you see it? I don't see it anywhere. We're like, well, it was here. So we have this moment. I look over at my horses like this. Right? And I just see this little dab of vanilla on the end of his nose. I thought, oh my gosh, he ate my ice cream. And there was so much of my relationship with him and other animals in my life just really like that. So what came into my life was friendship and companionship in really unexpected, sweet ways. So that story kept coming back to me, and then today it comes together, in part of, so one of the things, another story came to me, which is also humorous, but is, and I had shared this when we talk about what's an unexpected thing no one would guess about you, right? And as a child, not much older than that, I had been hiking with a friend, and we went through the creeks, and we got to a certain point of a pasture, and we saw a cow all by itself in the pasture. And then we were like, well, what's on the other end of the pasture? Somehow let's go find it. We were always doing that. Well, I didn't know why there was one cow in the pasture. We didn't even know until we got home what happened. So I was ahead of her marching along, and at a certain point, I noticed that cow looked mad. He looked like, I don't want you in here, and I'm going to get you out of here. And I turned to my friend, who was quite a distance from me, and just screamed, run! And she's like, what? And I started running, and we barely got out of that. We're just like, what happened? We eventually scaled the fence, and the cow rammed the fence. When we got home, her sister said, that was not a cow, right? That was a bull. We're like, a bull? And she said, yeah, that was a bull. And so part of what's meaningful about this and these stories is that, and it has carried me through as a yogi and, as this later life spiritual journey, is I was very adventuresome, and I just, was like, let's try it. Why not that? How about that? And I learned in various ways what didn't work. right? Like I didn't see anything about that. And so I'm going to say a phrase came to mind. It was recently, and I learned this in the 12-step community. Some of you know I'm recovering addict alcoholic. I got sober when I was 20, and that marked the beginning of an adult relationship with God. So between childhood, then there was a phase of teenager where I was lost. I will just say I was lost. I could not figure it out, and my relationship with God, I didn't know how to draw upon that to sustain me. So earlier it had worked, but then this phase, it wasn't working. And alcohol and drugs came into my life. I never wanted to go down that road at all, but it helped with the pain. It just helped with the pain. And at a certain point, I was able, through divine grace, to make a different choice. And at the beginning of that choice, it wasn't long before 12 steps came into my life with this message that you need divine energy for healing. Like, you can stop something, but it's only a matter of time before that pattern, I could say in yoga teaching, so deeply rooted. In order to be free, it's not your energy that will free you. Not even good habits. Asha talks about that. Yogananda said, good habits not enough. You need something more than that. And what I learned there was you need conscious contact and inner communion. And so how it ties into the reading for me was this journey of developing a relationship with God that had been so sweet and pure and I had confidence in. But at this point in my life, I felt unworthy, for one thing. I'd made choices I didn't feel good about. And now I needed God, and how do I bring God in? And it was through this practice of seeking. What has been in my mind lately is from the Bible, from Jesus' teaching, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open to you, ask and you'll receive. So that journey of, well, how do I do it as an adult? And I needed that power. It wasn't a philosophy for me. That's the gift, I could say, of addiction. How strange. I wouldn't have thought it was a gift. It's been a great gift in my life because it put me in a position where I absolutely knew I couldn't do it alone, and I needed to have a tangible experience of the divine to be okay. And what I love also about the practice is it's daily. So I think a lot of why it's in my mind, I'm coming up on a 40-year anniversary of that. And so for me, it's my spiritual life, right? So it's, David was sharing yesterday at the Kirtan, this about his discipleship. It was so touching. And these anniversaries, they matter. They matter. They mean a lot of, this moment where we say yes. And we don't just say yes once, right? It's ongoing. And so when Swami said, I never let anything disturb my peace, that choice, right? Like, I have a choice. And I remember another story about him where he said to Asha, I could be embarrassed. I could choose to be embarrassed about something that happened, right? And it's interesting, like it's not automatic. So the outer events of our life, the difficulties we might face, it seems like, well, certainly in the worldly culture, I would be unhappy about that. I would be afraid. I would be depressed. I would be agitated. And on a physiological level or a material plane level, that is what the energy is. So how do I walk through that energy in a way where I'm connected on a deeper level, where I feel the peace, as the reading said, that, help me to know thee as thy river of peace that flows underneath the sands of all life experience. That's the teaching, that God's ever present, ever here. It's our own soul nature. And that was the piece for me. Yoga came into my life at 15 years sober, and it was like, wow, took the whole journey to a whole nother level of understanding. But again, of conscious choosing. What does it mean to invite God every day? And how do I be honest and authentic about where I'm standing in this moment and what's being offered in terms of tools and practices? A funny story came to mind in these readings that I had heard a long time ago. A man was on a cliff, I guess looking out at the view, and he slipped and fell off the cliff. And it was very high up. So as he's falling, he sees one single branch sticking out from the mountainside and grabs it. And now he's hanging right off the side of the cliff. He looks up, it's too high to get to the top. He looks down, okay, there's nothing else he can grab onto. And he wasn't a spiritual man, really, per se, but he realized this moment is a God moment. So he got it immediately and just started yelling, God, God, help, help. And he went on for a while, help, help. And finally, he heard a response from God, right? This voice, I've heard your prayer. Let go. He's like, what? So he's hanging on and he said, is there anybody else up there? And I just love that because the journey spiritually can feel like that. Like you go, wait a minute, what was the guidance? How do I do that? How do I find peace in the midst of this? And it's just, it's delightful, it's lighthearted, and it's true. It's true. So it can seem foolish or childish, which is different than childlike, right? That to have peace in the midst of a storm. It can seem like I'm disconnected from the storm and I don't really know what's going on and, what I'm drawing upon. Well, it's just, there's a lot of permission in our world to be unhappy. There's a lot of permission to be afraid, a lot of encouragement for that. And it can feel lonely to choose to be agitated and to live in a deeper truth. What I know, and from our teachings, is I can't, again, do that alone. I need friends. I need others who I'm watching do it. And they give me courage and strength, right? And also wisdom, which is lovely in terms of Heavenly Father, the representation of that. That courageous, why not, I'll go for it, which Yogananda loved about Americans, right? Is like, sure, self-realization, right? That energy. What I've really needed to learn in this journey, we all do need to learn it, it's just come at it in a different way, is wisdom, right? And so 2 different astrological readings had pointed out to me, Drupada had said, it's not a popular word in our culture, which is vairagya, dispassion. He said, you can see something, a possibility, and it's like what he described was letting all the horses out of the barn, right? And he said, and then you get there and you're like, oh, maybe that wasn't the right choice, and you got to bring all the horses back. And another astrologer had said to me within our Ananda world, he said, it's like a rocket ship. Right? Many years later, I thought, okay, I'm still working with that. But it's come as a learning in the paths of yoga. I'm saying this from the perspective of we all are working with finding harmony and balance within ourselves and how to draw upon that to be able to live in peace. And to know, well, what gets me into trouble? How do I get off track? And how can Asha talks about like coming back to center. Like how can I come back to center and raise the energy up here and live in that place where I'm not removed from what's happening in the world. I'm not untouched by what's happening in the world, or even in my own personal life. But I'm able to bring God into it. So in the reading today, when we're needing God, it's not that God needs to be closer. So it can really feel like that. I mean, that's been my experiences. I was saying the other day, just pondering a challenge, and I heard myself say, I need a lot of grace. Right? And I thought, well, it's there. Right? Then the teachings just came right in and said, well, the grace is there. So what you need is ever present. So then the response is to step toward it. How do I step toward it? How do I open my heart to receive it? Last night, Biraj and several others led this amazing kirtan, and Yogananda said that kirtan, divine music bypasses the mind and goes right to the heart, so it'll open up the heart and help us to be receptive. So he said, Yogananda said, chanting is half the battle. And it's a beautiful go-to for me of go to the music, listen and sing it, as Asha's been telling us lately a lot. Sing along with it. We need to be singing it because then the vibration is within us, right? And that will lift our consciousness. And that was the other piece that Swami had in the reading today of lift your eyes. Lift, right? Lift your eyes, lift your consciousness. I've always been really struck by the yoga's approach that is very physiological. That's very much, many of you know, I teach the yoga postures, and I need them. So I really feel like Master understood that and had me do that for my own evolution. But the idea being, it comes in many forms, this understanding of how to work with ourselves. How do we work with the physical realm, the physical body, and begin to climb the inner stairway, moving from what I can experience in my body, and then my breath, and then energy and thought, and more subtly consciousness. And all the teachings guide us through that journey. They help us pay attention, be aware, notice, pause, and ask the question, which we hear a lot in the Ananda world, why is this happening? And the more time that we spend, what I see in the lives of others, with a spiritual maturity, there is an inquiry, a power in that inquiry, right? And a receptivity, a willingness to hear the answer, rather than, is there anybody else up there? Where it's okay to feel that way, right? It's okay. And sometimes we need to learn the lesson several different ways, right, to get it. But it's always a gift. It's always a blessing. It's always intended to help us know who we are, to remember who we are. The reason that we can have peace in the midst of anything that's happening is we are peace. That's our nature. That's our divine nature. So the reading today, this invitation, and I guess I'll say this, that because I found myself reflecting on the journey, I invite you to reflect on yours. I also was thinking about the beautiful stories of what led you here, right? How did you come to Ananda? Right? And both David, James, and Letty were in my mind as I was reflecting on this. I love their story. I mean, I really love everyone's story, but I won't tell it. You can ask them, and they can respond how they feel to. But there's always, in my experience, the miraculous. Right? There's always the way in which, well, this happened, and then that happened, and then this happened, and I came here. And beyond that was I stayed. That's the choice, right? That's the choice to say, okay, well, I got here, but why am I still here? Why am I still here? What is it that is keeping me engaged? And part of the practice is to really nurture that. To be, Yogananda said around wedding anniversaries, and I think of this with discipleship as well, and any vow that we take spiritually, reflect on the time of that decision. Where were you? What was happening? Because vibrationally, you go right back into the energy. And I find one of the most inspiring things is to watch vow ceremonies, to be invited to be with the disciples as they take that vow. And we recommit ourselves, but to see someone be so courageous and to say, I'm going to trust what I know to be true inside of myself. And I'm making a decision to honor that and not let anything sway me. And that's not easy, right? That's an ever new opportunity. How do we choose that? Can I choose it now? Right? Will I receive it now? Is this the moment? It's not always, the journey isn't always hard and difficult. Sometimes it's this lullaby, right? Of just, be under the trees at night and listen to the music of the chanting. And the day started with yoga on the green, and I thought, how did I get here? how did I end up in this? And I know, I'll wrap up with this. The friend of mine many years ago called me and said, I felt it was God speaking through her. She said, I've been thinking about you. And we hadn't been in touch for many years. And she said, in essence, what she was saying to me, well, she said it this way. She said, I see now every choice you've made has led you to where you are. Your life is the way it is because of the choices you've made. And I thought, wow, that's true. As soon as I heard her say that, and her life and I, they went different ways. They went different ways. And when I was choosing at 20 to go in a new direction, it was a lonely walk for a while. Right? It was a lonely, I can't explain it. I did find a community to help me, and that community led me to this community, right? And so anyway, it's an amazing, blessed adventure that we're all on together. And Asha wrote me the other day, we were having an email exchange, and she signed it off, Adventures in Consciousness, right? And I just love that because I feel that's the truth. So here we are being given the invitation to choose peace, to know that, that's wisdom, to choose peace. It's in us, and it's not childish, it's childlike, to have the confidence in God's presence, Heavenly Father, Divine Mother. We're loved and cared for, and all we need ever flowing to us.